The economy is going into a spiral of dysfunctionality.
Venezuela has, of today, the highest inflation in the world.
Venezuelans today cannot eat. You see people eating from the garbage.
Hospitals that have massive deaths of newborns, and there is no access to medication.
A cycle of violence and street protest.
Chavez was seen very much so as, a man of the people, the poorer people, and he identified with them and he loved them and they loved him.
He was very popular, he was very imaginative, but Chavez had a base of oil. He had a cash cow that never a leader in Venezuela had before.
When Chavez first came to power, oil was at roughly $7 to $9 a barrel. But by 2004, 2005, we're looking at oil price per barrel lifting at over $100 a barrel.
He has power and he has money. And so he decides new forms of social policies that can distribute the oil revenues in a more massive way downwards towards those that more need it, toward the poor.
Esta nuestra opción de darle poder al pueblo y especialmente a los más pobres, a los más débiles para que se levanten. Esta nuestra opción de construir un modelo económico desarrollado, moderno, productivo, diversificado, desarrollar al país.
So he went to Cuba, and Cuba came up with a bunch of new social programs. Massive new social programs for healthcare, for access to food, and for scholarships.
We have a whole raft of these so-called misiones, the social programs, which give people citizenship rights, identity cards, access to job training, access to breakfast clubs, university systems. So this is a very comprehensive effort to deliver basic social services.
What this is doing, though, is essentially still using oil as that redemptive quality to bring social change, while bringing social change, deepening the dependence on oil, and he can do this while the prices of oil are high.
The whole strategy of Chavismo initially was about diversification of the economy, reducing Venezuela's vulnerability to oil price bust. And in the initial Chavista model, this was hinged very much around processes of land reform, trying to reduce Venezuela's dependence on agricultural imports and food imports. What happens after the presidential elections of 2006 is that Chavez is bringing oil straight back into the center of Venezuela's economic model.
He had a high price of oil, and he had access to finance. He could borrow as if it was going out of fashion. So he decided that that was the moment to radicalize the process.
Todo aquello que fue privatizado, nacionalícese.
The Venezuelan government begins to embark on a very ad hoc, very clumsy process of nationalization. Nationalizing really big, heavy state assets. So we're talking about the electricity sector, the oil sector, the telecommunications sector.
He also went out and bought the Banco de Venezuela from the Spanish bank Santander. They went out and bought all the cement companies.
The country lost most of its private business. People were prosecuted. Their assets were taken by the state. Chavez thought that didn't matter because he had resources to import.
We're importing to medicines, we're importing clothes, we're importing cars, we're importing everything. And we destroy the production capacity of the country. He really doesn't have an economic model more than bring back everything to the state control.
He's trying to understand what socialism looks like in Venezuela. And that's a big challenge, because again, no one has done that yet. So at one level, does it mean creating parallel institutions?
You have basically a parallel state structure. Instead of reforming ministries and institutions, simply creating parallel structures such as the misiones themselves. So you've got high levels of expenditure on bureaucracy, on duplication of responsibility. All of this is becoming very onerous and expensive. The only way that this model can be sustained for Venezuela is through foreign borrowing.
They used the period of the oil boom from 2004 to 2014 to sextuple the public debt.
As oil prices went up, Venezuela spent it all. They didn't set any money aside in a sovereign wealth fund and a rainy day fund. So they've got money in case things go down. Everybody in the oil industry knows oil prices are cyclical.
Chavez gets sick. He gets cancer. Meanwhile, many things begin to unravel.
Capital markets said, these guys are borrowing as if it was going out of fashion. So they sort of started to stop lending to the country.
The economy starts to go down. People begin to say, wait a minute, before it's all gone, I'm going to get my piece of it.
Now, when Chavez had first come to power, he had said that essentially there was going to be a hard hand, an iron fist against these problems of corruption. But the reality was that absolutely nothing was done. So the end result is kind of decay of the Chavista Bolivarian revolution and a state which is becoming more and more indebted.
The biggest sucker in Venezuelan history is the guy who's going to follow Chavez as president. And that's exactly what happened.
Maduro has inherited a legacy of oil dependence at a period when Venezuela has gone bust and at a time when the oil price has gone bust.
In 2014, the economy was doing poorly, but as of June 2014, the price of oil started to go down.
When the oil price started dropping, the government had a severe debt and did not have enough dollars to buy the food imports and the medicine imports and all the good imports that it was buying before. And so from one day to the other, the scarcity overwhelmed the country. The basic food, milk, rice, soap, toothpaste, these things disappeared.
Venezuela's total stock of foreign debt is about $150 billion. It's seeking to try and renegotiate with bondholders, but the problem is that these sanctions that the US has imposed make it very difficult for Venezuela to roll over its debt.
The collapse of economic activity that started in 2014 worsened in 2015 and then went down the drain in 2016 and 2017 makes this period from 2013 onwards the largest recession in the Western Hemisphere history, almost twice as large as the Great Depression of the US.
Maduro has simply not addressed any of the problems or the legacy that he inherited from President Chavez.
And that's been very difficult for people who are not in that elite, loyalist circle around Maduro, profiting and benefiting and living the high life because they don't have to worry about going shopping every day or paying their bills. The people actually in the street who are experiencing the dramatic and detrimental effects of the economic crisis are the ones who are saying, wait a minute, something's not right here. And in the end, Maduro can wipe his hands clean of as much as he wants, but he is the president. So he becomes the one who is responsible.